Hey everyone, welcome to the Option Series live stream here on the ESS YouTube channel. We've got a really lovely performance for you tonight and a great program. We've got Joe Moffett and Cecilia Lopez who are presenting some really lovely performances that they sent us this week. And we're gonna see some of the performances and then we're gonna discuss their work in between some of the pieces. So without any further ado, let's check out the first piece here from Joe Moffett and Cecilia Lopez.
Breaking.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for presenting these duos tonight. I really loved the first piece here. It's like really ripping set here between both of these. So thanks so much for presenting it. And I wanted to start out just maybe by giving our viewers an idea of where you both come from musically, and if either of you have like an early memory of a musical experience that kind of pushed you towards out music or free music, or if you can remember like a divergent point in your musical development that was like, okay, that's the direction I want to go, or if it was just a completely natural progression towards where you are. If either of you have one that leaps out, you can jump in.
Well, Cecilia, do you have one?
I'll come up with one. I mean, early musical memory of weird stuff. I had a tape recorder when I was growing up, and I used to do improvised singing with my sister. And we would have like these sessions in which we would just like put, press play and record for hours and hours, like insane singing songs that sadly the tapes got lost, but I think they were like one of the best things that I've done. Like, it's really bad that I can't go back to that because it was out. And I was in the conservatory 5 years later thinking that I had to quit because what I wanted to do was that and not like music theory, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing. I want to hear those tapes.
Me too.
We can find them sometime.
No, they're being destroyed. They don't exist anymore.
The most perfect like developmental like thing to practice, I feel like, is just singing with it. I feel like that would be so impactful to anyone and really helps you open up the vocabulary in an interesting way. Joe, how about you? Do you remember like a point in your upbringing, or if it was more like a moment in conservatory or some other point in time where you kind of felt that pull?
Yeah, I mean, I think like it was sort of gradual. I think, I got into jazz first, in like kind of middle school, playing trumpet, ending up doing like, Massachusetts, probably other states as well. There's like, Central District jazz band, like, try out for a jazz group and then perform. So I kind of got some nice experiences like in just having good music education. My parents are musicians as well and music educators, and so is my brother. So that's always been kind of part of my life anyway. But I think like in terms of listening, I mean, very like classic jazz trumpet player answer, but like listening to Miles Davis definitely like put me into the direction, I think, ultimately of playing weird music, because even if his stuff wasn't like super duper loudest stuff in the world, as like a high schooler, and then, in these kind of formative years of like exploring jazz and that particular kind of improvised music, that kind of brought me towards some spaces that I might not otherwise have checked out. So like hearing, like Bitches Brew for the first time or something. It's pretty weird album. I mean, still, like it's not like the most like easy listening thing on the planet, even if it's like kind of like super, well known by a lot of people. So I think that kind of put me sort of in that direction. And then of course, I don't know, getting into like Cecil Taylor, and then like getting to study with Joe Morris at NEC, which you're with whom you're familiar. So yeah,
pretty weird album.
Yeah, so I would say that those are kind of like, that's kind of the trajectory. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also wanted to ask you both, and I love this duo a lot. There's a lot of like really disparate like sonic information happening between the two of you, but you also have like a really amazing ability to match timbres and frequencies at times. And I wanted to ask each of you about, well, if you could describe your process for developing new sonic techniques on both of your respective instruments. Obviously, Joe, there's like a lot of extended wind stuff happening and a lot of like different angles at the mouthpiece and interesting like little technical things there that you've clearly worked out. And Cecilia, like I don't know if I've ever seen someone play a Nord and like a well, okay, that bad setup. No. I'm gonna recover from that. But like someone playing the instrument in the way that you are and using like sonic way more just like textural stuff with that instrument, that I, as someone who's not an expert in the different like varied instruments in the realm of electric piano or synths or keyboards, but I generally perceive like an electric piano is something that can frequently be very like pitch reliant, and finding ways to break free from that is like really amazing. And I haven't seen it done so often with an instrument like that in the way that you do it, I guess is what I'm reaching for there. So I don't know if you, if either of you want to describe just like what your process is like for developing and finding those new, just new sounds and new techniques.
Sure. I mean, I think for me, and I guess kind of where like Cecilia and I meet, I had kind of begun doing for, I guess for a while now, like sort of deconstructive things and like pulling parts of the instrument out and kind of forcing the sounds out of different parts of the instrument other than the bell, just to kind of, you end up getting these bizarre kind of like what's the word, like untempered sounds, I mean, you can do that through the bell, of course, as well, but it sort of like forces you to deal with kind of limited timbres and deal with them. So I had been doing that, and I think like with Cecilia, we're talking about ways to use that, and I think Cecilia, you suggested like miking them, or like what we do in that particular piece that we just saw was putting these like little condenser mics that like Cecilia built into the instrument to really pick up those kind of wacky, not quite locked in pitches, because you can get sort of pitches out of it, but they sound not very resonant, So when they're forced through, you kind of, and how, depending on how you mix it, Cecilia also mixed this recording, so you can kind of pan those sounds. And so it's like, if I hit this valve and I'm playing through this valve, it's going through this slide that's opened up and has a microphone in it. Okay. So it's constantly like pivoting where the sound is coming out, and then so it creates these like hard kind of almost like robotic shifts from like trumpet bell to like side of the trumpet to that sort of thing. So that's kind of like one technique that we kind of dove in on, and I don't know. Yeah, Cecilia, you can talk about it a bit more.
Yeah. No, that was a fun experiment. Also, like I feel like there's a lot of people working with spatial sound, but this is so like playing based, and that's not very common. So it was like it's a cool approach because it's very organic. Mm-hmm. I feel. In terms of the synth, the Nord was the first synth that I had. I grew up playing the piano, and then I had access to a Nord, and I was like, oh my god, it's like playing the electric guitar, and it's kind of digital hell in a way. Uh-huh. Like I feel like it's bad taste. It has like you could play like with one key hands off and it'll go, which is ridiculous.
This is why I was so fascinated, by the way, and I needed to get your perspective on using this instrument, because you're like,
I love it.
Seriously breaking it free in a way that I literally have never seen done before, and I didn't know if that was an embarrassing question to ask or not. But
no,
it's really amazing.
It's good. It's a conscious decision. Like it's sort of bad taste. It has like delay and reverb at the end, which I usually made the joke that it's like having like ketchup and mayo like after a sandwich, and it's like yeah, sure, I'm gonna use a lot of this. But I like that. It's like it has a lot of sense of humor, but it's also maybe it's because I've been playing it for like 10 years, like different models of the same, but it's very sensitive as well. If you use it as it's not intended, if you use it as it's intended, it's horrible. It's a horrible instrument.
Well, okay, so you mentioned that getting a Nord for the first time was like getting an electric guitar, and there was something as a guitarist, there was something that resonated with me with the use of this instrument, which is that it particularly like the solid body electric guitar, because there's so little acoustic elements of the instrument, right? You're basically amplifying the resonance of a string directly through a circuit into an amplifier, and there's not a lot of room for like outside sound or like too much manipulation of that. And as they're commonly used kind of in a similar sense, like it's the fretboard, so it's pitch material being amplified directly into your amplifier, and it's very difficult to actually get that to not sound like just a flat plane of pitch material and actually find like varied timbres and amounts of like acoustic manipulation within that. So there's, I think, a commonality there between those two instruments of like it's designed for a very specific narrow method of use, and to actually be able to break free from that is like super impressive and deep and amazing. So I really I loved what you were doing with it. Yeah.
There's a little bit of like letting go of like what should be good. Like I make my own sounds, but I also like love like, picking up these techno sounds that are like unbearable, and then like, just, breaking them a little bit, but it's still like awful in a way.
But when you can really like, when you really focus in on it, you can it completely transforms the context of what that sound is. So you kind of, you don't hear it as if it's like the the overcooked electric piano sound that's pre-programmed. You hear it as a completely different thing removed from that context. And it's really, it's amazing. So we'll pick up this conversation a little bit. Let's roll the second video here. I also want to share that for anyone listening out there, if you have any questions for Joe and Cecilia, drop them in the chat. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can. But before we go too far down the rabbit hole, let's roll this second piece from Joe Moffett and Cecilia Lopez. All right, welcome back, folks. We're here with Joe Moffett and Cecilia Lopez. completely different piece, different session. Yeah. The second piece, really brilliant, amazing, completely different timbral stuff than the first piece. I was wondering if y'all could describe the process for this session or this piece in particular a little bit in terms of how you had the room set up and how you were using the different signals and everything, and how it fit together for you guys.
Sure. Start over again. I can explain my part, which is different from the norm, right? This is analog hell, but not so much. It's not so bad. I feel like it's more conservative somehow. I'm playing like an MS-20, Korg MS-20, and then I'm using a similar synth to that to filter the trumpet. Which is being like something that we've been working with a bunch, and I also have done it with other instruments, but it's becoming part of my practice somehow. But yeah, it's not much more than that, right? We're gating the trumpet and basically using mostly the LFO to modulate it and to activate the synth.
Yeah, right. And then for my part, yeah, it's like two microphones. So one is going through the synth, obviously, and then the other through an amp. And then, and then I like in that piece, I forgot that I used the reverb pedal so much in that piece, but it's fun. I mean, I was like, I'm going to bring the reverb pedal. That's a shout out to Wendy Eisenberg. I got that from her like years ago them years ago. I hadn't found myself using it so much until like quite recently for this. So it was fun to use. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, it completely opens up the sonic context for how you're hearing the thing, and then you have this kind of extra element pop out. It's really cool. Yeah, loved it. Is this a particular Cecilia, you mentioned that this is something that you've been doing for years. Have y'all as a duo been working with this setup super frequently over the last couple years, or is this a relatively new approach to it?
Yeah, the last couple of years have been a little bit of a parentheses.
Yeah.
But before that, we used it a bit, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the filter thing's like a little bit more recent than the condenser mic thing. So that, like, for example, on the album, we don't really do the filtering the trumpet thing. Sure. So that's sort of like kind of a little bit more recent. And yeah, it took like a little bit for me getting used to kind of losing control a bit. There's this sort of, and like Cecilia, I know like you and I have talked about this before, I definitely have found, or maybe this kind of made me realize like how much of a control freak I guess I am about my own playing. You play all these like extended techniques and make all these noises and whatever, but there's still like all this feeling of like, well, I'm trying to execute it as accurately, like as well as I possibly can, and so then having sounds kind of out of your control, you're producing them in part, but then they get like spun through this machine is like a very different experience. So I found myself being like, well, I have to almost treat my instrument as another synthesizer and think of it a little bit more as like a thing that I'm pushing a button on or something in this context. So it was kind of a good experience for me in that way as well, just in terms of process. Yeah, but it's just kind of become more natural over time.
I had to convince you a little bit.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. There were definitely some sessions where I'm like, I don't think this is working.
Is solo playing something that each of you do super frequently under normal circumstances, pandemic notwithstanding? Obviously there are major obvious ways how your approach to playing by yourself changes when you're playing in a duo. But yeah, I think the thing that you mentioned, Joe, is really interesting about control and not just playing, you know, two separate instruments in duo, but having one instrument being manipulated by the other is a really interesting kind of problem to have to solve and have to deal with and learn from. So I guess how has your you know, your playing either solo or in other groupings, you know, influenced the work of this duo specifically, and how is it like radically different from your other work, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my solo work, it's or has been lately, or in the past couple of years, playing with this instrument that is made with speaker wire and contact microphones and speakers. So it's sort of like a weaved mesh that I use to feed back, and I interact with it. And it's not really about control, you know, more the opposite. Like, it has some kind of agency. It does, like, I don't know, I set it up and I'm like, okay, are you happy? Like, are you gonna behave today? That's the vibe. So I have the experience of, for me, of like 5 minutes before the show, like setting up and being like, is this gonna work? You know, is this gonna do what I want, or maybe not? It's something that I'm familiar with, and I feel like it's part of my work. But in the duo context, what I find interesting is that it's like I also have my own synth. So it's like there's one synth, there's one trumpet, and then there's like this in between stuff, which because of the way I play, I have control, but also like not so much, because like the sounds that the other person is doing is the trigger. So that I'm not in control either, and I found that like edgy space very interesting. Yeah.
Hearing that you work with feedback a lot is really informative too, because I've done some work with feedback before, whether it's like, you know, plugging the outputs of a mixer to the inputs of a mixer, etc., like that thing, or a lot of different ways that you can work it, or with a guitar plugged into a really loud amplifier. There's like I've always been super fascinated by those elements that you can't control, that are completely temperamental and weird, and like are different in one room from another. And so, yeah, I mean, is that something that filters a lot into this duo for you, Cecilia, or is it completely different and you feel like, you know, we talked about the different types of control, right? Whether it's like this other human in the room with you, or it's this circuit or this feedback loop that has its own, you know, version of intelligence that you have to contend with. But yeah, it's very interesting. You know, it's fascinating to me to think about considering all that stuff. But yeah, is the feedback something that's super relevant to this grouping, or is that mostly, are you dealing with the opposite here?
No, I don't think it's the opposite. I think it probably transpires, you know, in every project. Like, it has to do, there's something about like the unexpected too. Like, I don't know, I'm not so into like virtuosic playing or anything like that. So it's like, how do I, like, what am I talking with? Like, I need something to talk with. So in my solo performances, like, that's what's, you know, giving me information to react. And I feel like in a duo conversation, that's kind of like a third voice that it's like, you know, also like saying things that are maybe unexpected and out of our own like ego trip of like, I want to play like this. And it's like, but it sounds like that. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, I guess my other question for this way of playing that you both have developed is like, how does it change from room to room or gig to gig or experience to experience? Obviously, the last year and a half has been its own thing. That is something to contend with. But like, if, you know, how does the playing with this duo change from moment to moment, or, you know, session to session? And do you find that there's like a huge swing in how the instruments react or the room reacts, both acoustically and otherwise?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think if I've noticed like a massive like difference. I mean, we've performed in a few spaces in the past year, like either doing a recording or rehearsing at Cecilia's place. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I'm just trying to think, like, you know, recording for like this video, we definitely noticed like changes just based upon the equipment we were using, like the amplifiers we were using, and kind of like the size of the space. And sort of had a little bit more like breathing room in a sense. So, but that is probably more just like, that might not be so much based upon like the materials we're using so much. I don't know, Cecilia, what do you think?
No, for me, it's been kind of a struggle because of the pandemic, and we've been rehearsing at my house. And there's a lot of the stuff that it has to be sort of, we're playing with the space. So if we rehearse like everything in like a PA in a room, it doesn't sound. And for me, the experience of going to the studio was like, oh, now we're actually playing with, like, I'm playing the amp. That's what I'm supposed to do. Or playing the,
Yeah. There was a bit of a eureka moment, I think, when we were there. Like, oh, okay. It felt, there was a certain, I don't know,
Yeah, like accessing.
Space, I don't know.
Accessing the, well, because I think like when you work with electronics, mostly you have to acknowledge that you're working with amplification, and amplification is an instrument.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Rehearsing in my house is fine, but it's conceptual. It becomes like speculation, At some point.
Those are the questions I always love getting into, is like the level of awareness that you have of like the air moving in the space that you're in, and how that behaves differently depending on the size and the shape of the room. And, it really extends, like Cecilia was saying, as an instrument itself, in addition to the amplifier, in addition to the circuit, in addition to the trumpet and whatever else you're dealing with. There's just so many parameters there to be manipulated. It's always super fascinating to me. Before we get into this third piece, I wanted to ask if you guys have any more to share about the other session, because this piece is going to be from that first session that we saw. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
More with the condenser mics in the trumpet, and the process with this setup. So I don't know if you guys have anything to preface this third piece with about the approach or the practice, but
I don't think so. I don't know. Did you have something?
No, I think it's mainly what we've talked about. Yeah. No, let's hear it. Maybe after thought.
All right. Let's roll this third piece from Joe Moffett and Cecilia Lopez. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back, folks. Here with Joe Moffett and Cecilia Lopez on the Option series. Yeah, I just wanted to ask about, well, first of all, again, like the now knowing more about the setup for this the session that we just saw, it's just really fascinating to hear. Joe, you work with the condenser mics in the. Are they going directly into the amplifier, or are they being manipulated by Cecilia?
No, they're going directly into the amp in this case. Yeah.
Okay. Amazing. Yeah, hearing both your like manipulation of the super noisy elements of those condensers and like dealing with that against the kind of straight tone of the trumpet is like super fascinating to hear your control over those things, and or occasionally lack of control, and just like dealing with the problems that presents, you know, is like really amazing. And Cecilia, again, just like the familiarity you have with that instrument and being able to get exactly what you want out of it after like years of working with it is really brilliant and impressive. But yeah, I wanted to know if there were elements in terms of like phrasing or time that you feel are super affected by either both playing together as this duo specifically, or also just the very particular way that the sounds are organized with the setup and everything, not to completely lean too much onto your approach with this duo, but it is really fascinating to me. Do you find that the realities of how you're dealing with the sounds, if that informs like how you feel you need to play in terms of both like time in terms of like featuring and leaning into like longer tones and sounds, or if it has kind of no effect and you're just kind of like going for it regardless?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, one thing that comes to mind is, well, in terms of time and sort of like the kind of interaction. I mean, like in that piece, you know, there's kind of like this continual thing that's sort of happening underlying in like the synth, you know, and then it like kind of shifts and it changes, and then like I'm just sort of like doing some noisy stuff over it or whatever. But there's always, I think the thing that has been kind of fun and interesting working as a duo with this setup is just how like kind of awkward the spaces can feel sometimes. Like when we're, you know, recording, doing a session, performing, sometimes it's like it even feels off, you know. I would say that when we recorded the album, I had afterwards, I was like, I don't know if I like played well. I felt like I wasn't really like in the zone, and like there's these like really like things that feel like they don't work in the moment, but then listening back, it was like it's like on that edge, you know, is like kind of like the awkwardness sort of works sometimes. So like there are kind of like two things happening on sort of slightly different planets, but they like manage to coexist in a way that works. I don't know if that answers the question, but I don't know. That's sort of like one of the things that has come to mind with this particular process. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're working with the awkwardness as well. Like there's a little bit of sense of humor, and for me particularly, because the North is so bizarre, the spaces feel like super exposed. Like it's like coming to a party with your drunk uncle and being like, "Yeah, this is my uncle, and I'm sorry," you know. Now it's doing this, and then maybe it'll be nicer. But there's something it's a nice. For me, like it takes me to a very like it's a nice attitude to have, you know. It's a little bit less hectic than maybe other playing situations that I find myself into. I like that. There's like a pacing that it probably also has to do with the trumpet, because I could play the synth for like 10 hours straight, no problem, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But
there's almost inherently a fatigue or an endurance element sometimes to improvising as well, and depending on what your instrument is, that obviously becomes a major consideration.
Yeah, I mean, and the length of a breath too, right? Which becomes like a compositional element in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think like in terms of in terms of like the I don't know, the pacing, I tend to, I mean, just maybe in my playing in general, I like to have moments where I like kind of stop and let like things unfold. And so there is kind of a lot of opportunity for that to happen sort of because of this, I mean, the situation, because of the fact that it's a synth and you can have these kind of continual sounds sort of like buzzing, you know? So I you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's what you think about it.
Like it's like, I don't know, it's like if there's something that Cecilia is doing and it's captivating. I mean, this is maybe with any group, but I like to be able to let those things unfold for a little while, because also with this setup that I'm working with, it can be so harsh, and I mean, I like the harshness of it, but it is also sometimes like you're just getting like a lot of harsh, like hyper amplified trumpet, you know. So I kind of do have to pace myself as a result of that as well, so that I'm not like over layering it with like kind of those sounds. So I have to like figure my way around that in a creative way if I can.
Yeah. One thing that I was really blown away with in all of the pieces tonight is like the level of polish that you two have as a duo. And I don't mean that in the sense that you know what to expect and that it's like played out and that you know what you're, what's going to happen at any given moment. No, but I was going to say that
you can say it.
The level of comfort you both have with that kind of edge of uncertainty and control and not being able to control certain things, you guys both kind of have a certain like zen comfort level with that, and that is really beautiful to watch you guys interact in that way, because you are dealing with some very unpredictable, untamable elements here, and you both displayed such a beautiful like amount of comfort with that reality, and also being able to really like manipulate those sounds in a way that was very beautiful and amazing and impressive and lovely. Before we're through with the program tonight and roll the fourth video, I did want to ask you both about this record that's coming out, the tape on Tripticks Tapes, right? If you guys want to talk a little bit about how this recording came together, and where the lovely folks in the audience can find it very soon.
One thing is the instigator of the recording is Kevin Ramsey, that works at Harvest Works in New York, and invited us to do a recording like on the first months of the summer of the pandemic, sort of like we can do a recording with two people. And we're like, all right, okay, let's do it. So super thankful, still for that. What else about the record? I did the mixing, then John Lipscomb did the mastering. I think the link to buy it's on the chat right now, right? On Triptych Records. I don't remember how many pieces there are.
There are 9.
Maybe? Okay.
9, yeah. And so Nat, decided, he was down to put it out, which was really nice. And so 9 pieces. they're all kind of with that setup with the condenser mics, as I've made mention before. And yeah, the tapes look like this.
They're beautiful.
Joe did the art with some radioactive piece of base. Oh, what is it?
It's a dish. It's uranium glass, also known as Vaseline glass. It's like an antique dish that has very, very minor amounts of radioactivity, which when you put under a black light, it glows. So I put it under a black light and took a photo of it.
We love it. That's amazing.
Yeah,
also, unlike other formats that are out there, you can actually have a cassette right now and it won't get tied up into several years of manufacturing delays like some other recorded music formats. So go and get it right now because you can actually have it and listen to it and enjoy it now. Excellent. So before we roll this fourth piece, I just really want to thank Joe and Cecilia for joining me tonight and joining the series and presenting these pieces. They're really, amazing to witness and share with the folks in the community. So just wanted to thank you guys. And one more round of applause for Joe Moffett and Cecilia Lopez from the chat. Hey.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
No problem. Have a great night, everyone.
You too.
Yeah.